his wife, who were very unhappy because they had no children. These good people had a little window at the back of their house, which looked into the most lovely garden, full of all manner of beautiful flowers and vegetables. But the garden was surrounded by a high wall, and no one dared to enter it, for it belonged to a witch of great power, who was feared by the whole world. One day the woman stood at the window overlooking the garden, and saw there a bed full of the finest endive. The leaves looked so fresh and green that she longed to eat them. The desire grew day by day, and just because she knew she couldn't possibly get any, she pined away and became quite pale and wretched. Then her husband grew alarmed and said, "What ails you, dear wife?" "Oh," she answered, "if I don't get some endive to eat out of the garden behind the house, I know I shall die." The man, who loved her dearly, thought to himself, "Come, rather than let your wife die, you shall fetch her some endive, no matter the cost." So at dusk he climbed over the wall into the witch's garden, and, hastily gathering a handful of endive leaves, he returned with them to his wife. She made them into a salad, which tasted so good that her longing for the forbidden food was greater than ever. If she were to know any peace of mind, there was nothing for it but that her husband should climb over the garden wall again and fetch her some more. So at dusk over he climbed, but when he reached the other side he drew back in terror, for there, standing before him, was the old witch. "How dare you," the witch said with a wrathful glance, "climb into my garden and steal my endive like a common thief? You shall suffer for your foolhardiness." "Oh," he implored, "please forgive me. Necessity alone drove me to the deed. My wife saw your endive from her window, and conceived such desire for it that she would certainly have died if her wish had not been gratified." The witch's anger was a little appeased, and she said, "If it is as you say, you may take as much endive with you as you like, but on one condition only, that you give me the child your wife will shortly bring into the world. All shall go well with it, and I will look after it like a mother." The man, in his terror, agreed to everything she asked, and as soon as the child was born, the witch appeared, and having given it the name of Rapunzel, which is the same as endive, she carried it off with her. Rapunzel was the most beautiful child under the sun. When she was 12 years old, the witch shut her up in a tower in the middle of a great wood, and the tower had neither stairs nor doors, only high up at the very top a small window. When the old witch wanted to get in, she stood underneath and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your golden hair." For Rapunzel had wonderful long hair, and it was as fine as spun gold. Whenever she heard the witch's voice, she unloosed her plaits and let her plaits. Whenever she heard the witch's voice, she unloosed her plaits As he drew near it, the prince heard someone singing so sweetly that he stood still, spellbound, and listened. It was Rapunzel in her loneliness, trying to while away the time by letting her sweet voice ring out into the wood. The prince longed to see the owner of the voice, but he sought in vain for a door in the tower. He rode home, but he was so haunted by the song he heard that he returned every day to the wood and listened. One day, when he was standing behind a tree, he saw the witch approach and heard her call out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your golden hair." Then Rapunzel let down her plaids, and the witch climbed up by them. "So that's the staircase, is it?" said the prince. "Then I too will climb it and try my luck." So the following day at dusk he went to the foot of the tower and cried, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your golden hair." And as soon as she had let it down, the prince climbed up. At first Rapunzel was terribly frightened when a man came in, for she had never seen one before. But the prince spoke to her so kindly, and told her at once that his heart had been so touched by her singing that he felt he should know no peace of mind till he had seen her. Very soon Rapunzel forgot her fear, and when the prince asked her to marry him, she consented at once. For, she thought, he is young and handsome, and I'll certainly be happier with him than with the old witch. So she put her hand in his and said, "Yes, I will gladly go with you. Only, how am I to get down out of the tower? Every time you come to see me, you must bring a skein of silk with you, and I will make a ladder of them, and when it is finished I will climb down by it, and you will take me away on your horse. And when it is finished, I will climb down. And when it is finished, I will climb down by it, and you will take me away on your horse." They arranged that till the ladder was ready. He was to come to her every evening, because the old woman was with her during the day. The old witch, of course, knew nothing of what was going on, till one day Rapunzel, not thinking, turned to the witch and said, "How is it, good mother, that you are so much harder to pull up than the young prince? He is always with me in a moment." "Oh, you wicked child," cried the witch, "what is this I hear? I thought I had hidden you safely from the whole world, and in spite of it you have managed to deceive me." In her anger, the witch seized Rapunzel's beautiful hair, wound it round and round her left hand, and then grasping a pair of scissors in her right, snip, snap, off it came, and the beautiful plaids laid on the ground. And, worse than this, she was so hard-hearted that she took Rapunzel to a lonely desert place, and there left her to live in loneliness and misery. But on the evening of the day in which she had driven poor Rapunzel away, the witch fastened the plaids onto a hook in the window, and when the prince came and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your golden hair," she let them down, and the prince climbed up as usual. But instead of his beloved Rapunzel, he found the old witch, who fixed her evil, glittering eyes on him and cried mockingly, "Ah, ah, you thought you would find your lady love, but the pretty bird has flown and its song is dumb. prince was beside himself with grief, and in his despair he jumped right down from the tower, and, though he escaped with his life, the thorns among which he fell pierced his eyes. Then he wandered, blind and miserable, through the wood, eating nothing but roots and berries, and weeping and lamenting at the loss of his lovely bride. So he wandered about for some years, as wretched and unhappy as he could be, and at last he came to the lonely desert place where Rapunzel was living. All of a sudden he heard a voice which seemed strangely familiar to him. He walked eagerly in the direction of the sound, and when he was quite close, Rapunzel recognized him and fell on his neck and wept. But two of her tears touched his eyes, and in a moment they became quite clear again, and he saw as well as he had ever done. Then he led her to his kingdom, where they were welcomed with great joy, and lived happily ever after. Puss in Boots, or the Master Cat. There was a miller who died and left to his 3 sons his mill, his ass, and his cat. The eldest had the mill, the second the ass, and the youngest nothing but the cat. The unfortunate young fellow was quite comfortless at having so poor a lot. "My brothers," said he, "may get their living handsomely enough by joining together their stocks, but for my part, when I have eaten up my cat and made gloves out of his skin, I must die of hunger." The cat, who heard all this, but pretended he did not, said to him with a grave and serious air, "Do not trouble yourself, my good master, for you have nothing else to do but to give me a bag, and get a pair of boots made for me, in which I may scamper through the dirt and the brambles, and you shall see that you have not so bad a bargain of me as you imagine." The cat's master did not rely very much upon what he said. He had, however, often seen him play a great many cunning tricks to catch rats and mice, when he used to hang by their heels, or hide himself in the flour, and pretended that he were dead, so that he did not altogether despair that the cat might help him in his miserable condition. When the cat had what he asked for, he booted himself very gallantly, and, putting his bag about his neck, he held the strings of it in his 2 forepaws, and went into a warren, where there were plenty of rabbits. He put bran and thistle into his bag, and stretching out at length, as if he were dead, he waited for some young rabbits, not yet acquainted with the deceits of the world, to come and rummage in his bag for what he had put into it. Scarcely had he lain down, but he had what he wanted. A rash and foolish young rabbit jumped into his bag, and Monsieur Puss in Boots, immediately drawing close the strings, took and killed him without pity. Proud of his prey, he went with it to the palace and asked to speak with his majesty. He was shown upstairs into the king's apartment, and, making a low bow, said to him, "I have brought you, sir, a rabbit of the warren, which my noble lord, the master of Carabas," for that was the title which Monsieur Puss in Boots was pleased to give his master, "has commanded me to present to your majesty with his compliments." "Tell your master," said the king, "that I thank him, and that he gives me a great deal of pleasure." Another time he went and hid himself among some wheat, holding still his bag open, and, when a brace of partridges ran into it, he drew the strings, and so caught them both. He went and made a present of these to the king, as he had done before. The received the partridges with great pleasure also. The cat continued for 2 or 3 months to carry his majesty, from time to time, game of his master's taking. One day in particular, which he knew for certain that he was to take the air along the riverside, with his daughter, who was the most beautiful princess in the world, he said to his master, "If you will follow my advice, your fortune is made. You have nothing else to do but wash yourself in the river, where I shall show you, and leave the rest to me." The Marquis of Carabas did what the cat advised him to, without knowing why or wherefore. While he was washing, the king passed by, and the cat began to cry, "Help, help, my lord Marquis of Carabas is going to be drowned." At this noise, the king put his head out of the coach window, and finding it was the cat who had so often brought him such good game, he commanded his guards to run immediately to the assistance of his lordship, the Marquis of Carabas. While they were drawing the poor Marquis out of the river, the cat came up to the coach and told the king that, while his master was washing, there came by some rogues, who went off with his clothes, though he had cried out, "Thieves, thieves," several times as loud as he could. This cunning cat hid them under a great stone. The king immediately commanded the officers of his wardrobe to run and fetch one of his best suits for the Lord Marquis of Carabas. The king was amazingly friendly to him, and as the fine clothes set off his good looks, the king's daughter took a secret inclination towards him, and the Marquis of Carabas had no sooner cast 2 or 3 respectful and somewhat tender glances, but she fell in love with them. The king insisted on having him come into the coach and take part in the trip. The cat, quite overjoyed to see his project begin to succeed, marched on ahead, and, meeting with some countrymen who were mowing a meadow, he said to them, "Good people, you who are mowing, if you do not tell the king that the meadow you mow belongs to my lord Marquis of Carabas, you shall be chopped as small as herbs for the pot." The king did not fail to ask the mowers who the meadow they were mowing belonged to. "Why, to my lord Marquis of Carabas," they answered all together, for the cat's threats had made them terribly afraid. "You see, sir," said the Marquis, "this is a meadow which never fails to yield a plentiful harvest every year." The master cat, who went on ahead, met with some reapers, and said to them, "Good people, you who are reaping, if you do not tell the king that all this wheat belongs to the Marquis of Carabas, you shall be chopped up as small as herbs for the pot." The king, who passed by a moment later, insisted on knowing who all that wheat was. The king, who passed by a moment later, insisted on knowing who all that wheat which he then saw belonged to. "To my lord Marquis of Carabas," replied the reapers, and the king was very well pleased with it, as well as the Marquis. The master cat, who went always ahead, said the same words to all he met, and the king was astonished at the vast estates of my lord Marquis of Carabas. Monsieur Puss came at last to a stately castle, the master of which was an ogre, the richest had ever been known, for all the lands which the king had then gone over belonged to his castle. The cat, who had taken care to inform himself who this ogre was and what he could do, asked to speak with him, saying he could not pass so near his castle without having the honour of paying his respects to him. The ogre received him as politely as an ogre could do, and made him sit down. "I have been assured," declared the cat, "that you have the gift of being able to change yourself into all sorts of creatures you have a mind to. You can, for example, transform yourself into a lion or elephant and the like. That is true, answered the ogre very briskly, and to convince you, you shall see me now become a lion. Puss was so terrified at the sight of a lion so near him that he immediately got into the gutter, not without a great deal of trouble and danger because of his boots, which were of no use at all to him in walking upon the tiles. A little while later, when Puss saw that the ogre had resumed his natural form, he came down and admitted that he had been very much frightened. I have been also informed, said the cat, but I do not know how to believe it, that you have also the power to take on you the shape of the smallest animals. For example, to change yourself into a rat or a mouse, but I must admit to you I take this to be impossible. Impossible, cried the ogre, you shall see that at once. And at the same time he changed himself into a mouse and began to run about the floor. Puss no sooner saw this than he fell upon him and ate him up. Meanwhile the king, who saw as he passed this fine castle of the ogres, had a mind to go into it. Puss, who heard the noise of his majesty's coach running over the drawbridge, ran out, and with a low bow said to the king, Your Majesty is most welcome to this castle of my Lord Marquis of Carabas. What, my Lord Marquis, cried the king, and does this castle also belong to you? There can be nothing finer than this court and all the stately buildings which surround it. Let us go into it, if you please. The Marquis offered his hand to the princess, and followed the king, who went first. They passed into a splendid, spacious hall, where they found a magnificent feast, which the ogre had prepared for his friends, who were that very day to visit him, but dared not enter, knowing the king was there. His Majesty was perfectly charmed with the good qualities of my Lord Marquis of Carabas, as was his daughter, who had fallen desperately in love with him, and, seeing the vast estate he possessed, said to him, It will be owing to yourself only, my Lord Marquis, if you are not my son-in-law. The Marquis, making several low bows, accepted the honour which his Majesty conferred upon him, and forthwith, that very same day, married the princess. Puss became a great lord, and never ran after mice any more, except for his amusement. And now that we have read these two